shouldn't have looked at the last photo, but it's too late now. That image, burned into my brain, wasn't like the others. It wasn't just eerie or unsettling, or the kind of thing you could dismiss as a trick of the light. No, this one was different. It was wrong in a way that felt personal. The kind of wrong that makes your skin tighten and your chest ache because some part of you understands. You were never meant to see it. At first glance, it looked like a candid shot of my bedroom. My bed was messy, the lamp tilted, clothes on the chair in the corner. Normal enough. But then my eyes settled on the figure. Standing over my bed was a man, dressed in clothes I didn't recognize, his face blurred almost to nothing, as if the camera itself refused to define him. His head tilted slightly toward me, toward the lens, like he knew I'd eventually look at him. And in his hand, he was holding the camera. My camera, the one I'd been holding moments before opening the file. I blinked, leaned back, told myself I was imagining it. But when I zoomed in, my blood turned cold. Because the blur wasn't just a blur, it was a smudge of movement, as if his face wasn't static, but caught between expressions. Open mouth, closed. Eyes dark, then wide, changing with every second I stared. And worse, the longer I looked, the more I realized the angle of the shot wasn't from some corner of the room. It was from above, directly above my bed. That's when I dropped the camera. It clattered against the floor, battery cover flying open, but the screen kept glowing, almost taunting me. And on that glowing screen, frozen in digital clarity, was the same photo I had just seen. My bed, my room, the figure. I swear I could feel the weight of someone watching me from behind. Even now, recounting this, my throat is dry and my hands tremble. That last photo changed everything. It wasn't just a picture, it was a warning, or maybe a promise. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. You're probably wondering how I even came into possession of this cursed thing, why I didn't just throw it out the second I saw something off. And believe me, I've asked myself the same question 100 times. See, I wasn't looking for trouble. It was just a Saturday morning. One of those rare days when the sun feels friendly instead of overbearing. When you tell yourself you're going to be productive, but really, you're just wasting time. I was wandering my neighborhood, hopping from yard sale to yard sale, half looking for old vinyl, half pretending I didn't need more useless junk cluttering up my apartment. And then I saw it. Sitting alone on a folding table, between a box of tangled Christmas lights and a stack of romance novels, was a camera. Old, but not ancient. Heavy, sturdy, with a leather strap that looked worn by years of use. Something about it pulled me in. It reminded me of simpler times, of disposable cameras, and waiting for Prince to come back from the pharmacy. Nostalgia, wrapped in dust and faded plastic. I told myself it would be fun, maybe even an aesthetic project. Buy the camera, snap some photos, feel like a hipster for a weekend. That's all it was supposed to be. Just a harmless impulse buy. But it wasn't harmless. Not even close. Because that camera didn't just capture memories. It revealed things no one should see. Things I can't unsee. And if you're still listening, still curious about the man in the photo, about the way his blurred face seemed to move even after the shutter closed, well, then I owe you the story. But before that, you need to know how I found the camera. The morning it all began was deceptively ordinary. The sun was already high, soft golden light bouncing off windshields and white picket fences. I remember the sound of lawnmowers in the distance, the faint smell of someone grilling hot dogs way too early, and the scattered clusters of neighbors setting up their yard sales. Tables sagged under the weight of forgotten board games, stacks of DVDs nobody owned a player for anymore, and bins of mismatched toys that rattled when kids dug through them. I wasn't looking for anything. That's the funny part. I just liked wandering. Yard sales feel like little time capsules, like each driveway is its own miniature museum of nostalgia and bad decisions. I picked up a cracked snow globe at one house, flipped through water-warped comic books at another. I bartered for a record player I didn't need, walked away when the guy wouldn't budge below $20. Just another lazy Saturday, until I reached the corner house. It was an older place, shutters peeling, grass cut too short, like someone had rushed through the chore without caring. The sale itself was smaller than the others, just one long folding table set out on the driveway. A couple cardboard boxes slumped underneath, and behind the table stood a man. Older, thin, his skin leathery like he'd worked outside his whole life. He didn't have the eager smile most sellers wear, the kind that says please buy my junk. He just stared at me with this unreadable expression, somewhere between exhaustion and wariness. That's when I saw it. The camera. It lay off to the side, half hidden under a yellowing doily and a pile of magazines. Unlike everything else on the table, it wasn't dusty. The black casing gleamed faintly, even in the uneven light. It wasn't brand new, but it had weight, presence, like it had been cared for, or maybe just used far more than anything else there. A long leather strap curled around it like a snake at rest. I picked it up, feeling the unexpected heaviness in my hands. "How much for this?" I asked. The man didn't answer right away. He glanced at the camera, then back at me. His eyes narrowed slightly, and for a second, I thought he might tell me it wasn't for sale. "You don't want that," he said finally, voice low and rough. I laughed, thinking it was just a bargaining tactic. Everything's for sale at a yard sale. His lips pressed into a thin line. Some things aren't meant to be seen twice. That made me pause. It wasn't the words so much as the way he said them. Flat, final, like he was quoting someone else or repeating a rule he'd lived by for years. I should have walked away right there. A normal person would have. But instead, I felt my curiosity digging in. That camera was interesting now, not just a nostalgic toy, but a puzzle. "What do you mean by that?" I asked. He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. You'll find out soon enough, if you're stubborn." I chuckled, more to break the tension than because it was funny. Well, stubborn's kind of my brand. $10. He stared at me again, longer this time. Something flickered in his gaze. Fear? Pity? I couldn't tell. Finally, he sighed, held out his hand, and muttered, "Take it. But don't say I didn't warn you." I slipped him a crumpled 10, half expecting him to pull it back at the last second. But he didn't. He just turned away, fussing with a box of mismatched silverware, clearly done with me. The whole exchange left a sour taste in my mouth. Still, I slung the strap over my shoulder and kept walking, telling myself it was nothing. Sellers say weird things sometimes. Maybe he was just trying to give a piece of junk some mystique. But his words stuck with me. Some things aren't meant to be seen twice. When I first got the camera home, I didn't expect much. Honestly, I half expected it wouldn't even power on. But after snapping the battery cover back into place and giving it a cautious shake, the screen blinked to life. Grainy, washed out blue, the kind you only get from older tech. Somehow that made it feel more authentic, like I'd stumbled across a piece of time sealed away. There were already files stored on the memory card, dozens of them. I hovered over the delete all button for a second, but curiosity got the better of me. Instead, I opened the first folder. The earliest photos were mundane, so ordinary they almost felt staged. A birthday party in what looked like a suburban backyard. Balloons, paper plates, kids running around in costumes. I could almost hear the cheap pop music in the background. The next set was from what looked like a family road trip. Picnic tables, car hoods propped open, smiling faces squinting against the sun. At first, I smiled. Nostalgia has a way of pulling you in, even when the memories aren't yours. I leaned closer to the screen, scrolling through picture after picture, until something snagged my attention. One of the birthday photos. Everyone's eyes were aimed at the cake, except for one kid in the corner. He wasn't looking at the candles or the person taking the photo. His gaze was locked directly at me, right through the lens, through the years, through the screen in my hand. His expression wasn't happy or even neutral. It was intent, a little too intent, like he'd been waiting for someone to notice him. I shook it off. Kids make weird faces all the time. But as I clicked through more pictures, I started noticing a pattern. At the picnic, there was a man at the edge of the group, blurred but visible. In another photo, at a completely different location, there he was again. Same build, same tilted posture, same vague smudge where his face should have been. That's when I saw him, the man who shouldn't be there. He appeared in photo after photo, never in the center, never fully captured. Always off to the side, blending into the background. At first I thought maybe he was a family friend or someone who just happened to be around. But the deeper I scrolled, the more impossible it became to ignore. He was there at the birthday, the road trip, even a graduation photo where he was standing behind the bleachers, head tilted toward the camera. And then there was the strangest part. His clothes didn't match the eras. In one photo, the family was clearly dressed in the late 90s. Cargo shorts, graphic tees, frosted tips. But the man? He was wearing a suit that looked decades older, with a narrow tie and an almost shiny texture, like something out of the 60s. I zoomed in again and again, trying to make sense of it. Each time, the image seemed to resist clarity, the pixels blurring harder the longer I stared. My stomach tightened, my hands prickled with cold sweat. I told myself it was just coincidence. People end up in the backgrounds of pictures all the time, but something about him wasn't random. He was too consistent, too present, too aware. I scrolled faster, needing to prove myself wrong, needing to find just one photo where he wasn't there. But every batch, every memory, he appeared. Always peripheral, always lingering. Sometimes watching the group, sometimes watching the camera. And that's when it hit me. These weren't my memories. They weren't even snapshots of strangers. They were records. Like the camera wasn't just capturing images, it was holding on to something else. I tried to laugh, but it came out weak. My apartment felt suddenly smaller, the walls closer, shadows deeper. I told myself to stop, to delete the card, toss the camera, move on. But my hand kept scrolling, as if guided by something other than curiosity. And that's when the tone of the photos shifted. No more birthday parties. No more family trips. The people were gone. What replaced them? It started small. Just a single photo that didn't belong in the folder, an image I knew, with absolute certainty, I had never taken. At first I thought it was some leftover file, a corrupted remnant from the camera's previous owner. The photo was of my street at night. Same cracked sidewalk, same flickering lamp at the corner. But the perspective was wrong. It was taken from across the street, looking directly at my house. I stared at it for a long time, my heart slowing in a strange, heavy way. The timestamp said it had been taken at 2:17 a.m. the night before. I was asleep at that time. I brushed it off as a glitch, an old file with a new date stamp. But then a second photo appeared. This one was of my front door. Same timestamp style, same eerie clarity. And then came a third. My hallway. I shut the laptop, shoved the camera into its bag, and told myself I was imagining things. But that night, I woke at 3 a.m. to a faint sound. A click, like a shutter. I sat up in bed, listening. Nothing. Just my own pulse drumming in my ears. The next morning, there was another photo waiting for me. My bedroom door, half open, taken at 3:01 a.m. I called Mark. My hands shook as I held the phone to my ear. Someone's messing with me, I hissed, pacing the kitchen. These photos there of my house. My room, taken while I'm asleep. Someone's in here. Mark sighed on the other end. You're freaking yourself out, man. You've been glued to that thing for days. It's just old files or some weirdo app syncing, I don't know. No, it's not that. This is different. This is... Take a break, he said firmly. Unplug it. Put it away. Get some sleep. He hung up before I could argue. I went back to the camera. Another new image had appeared. My living room this time. The curtains drawn tight. A single shadow stretching across the carpet, too tall, too thin to be mine. My mouth went dry. I checked the locks, the windows, the closets. Nothing. Everything was as I'd left it. That night, I barely slept. I kept the camera on the table, screen facing me, like a guard dog. Every creak of the house made me jolt. Every flicker of streetlight outside painted shapes on my walls. When dawn broke, my eyes burned from exhaustion. I reached for the camera, almost afraid to touch it. There were 4 new photos waiting. One of my kitchen, taken from behind the fridge. One of my hallway mirror, showing not my reflection but a blurred, pale face. One of my bedroom, this time closer to the bed. And the last wasn't of me sleeping. It was of me waking up. I stared at the screen, my hands numb, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. In the photo, my eyes were half open, mouth parted, caught in that strange, vulnerable moment between dreaming and waking. But the perspective was impossible. The photo had been taken from the edge of the bed, right beside me. I felt my chest seize with a cold that had nothing to do with the morning air. The curtain shifted slightly in the corner, just from the breeze, but it was enough to make me flinch. I didn't laugh it off this time. That's when I stopped laughing. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the fridge, every car passing outside made me sit up and look around like a paranoid animal. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I grabbed the camera bag and dumped it onto my kitchen table. Out spilled the usual clutter, a scratch lens cap, a fraying strap, a pack of AA batteries half-leaking powder. But beneath all that, folded tight and shoved into a side pocket, were a few crumpled receipts. They were old, years old. Most were from gas stations and grocery stores, but one stood out. It was from a pawn shop in town. The date was faded, but I could just make out the year. 2015. That didn't make sense. The seller at the yard sale had told me nothing useful, just muttered his warning about things not being meant to be seen twice. But if the camera had changed hands at least once before, how many lives had it brushed against? The thought gnawed at me. I plugged the camera into my laptop and opened the photo folders again. This time I didn't just scroll, I dug. File names, metadata, hidden properties. I wasn't a tech genius, but I knew enough to notice when something felt wrong. The timestamps didn't just show dates and times. They had GPS coordinates buried in the metadata. My stomach lurched as I copied one set and dropped it into Google Maps. The location? The house where I bought the camera. Another set of coordinates pointed to a small patch of woods just outside town. And another, farther back, marked a crumbling rest stop along the interstate. I clicked through dozens, maybe hundreds, all places scattered across years. It was like the camera had been documenting not just images, but movements, pinning them to the earth like a map of where it had been. And then I stumbled onto an article, a forum thread buried deep in the search results. The title, The Yard Sale on Pine Hill. What happened to the family? I clicked, pulse hammering. The thread described a family of 4 who had lived in that same house. They'd vanished without explanation. Neighbors said they stopped seeing them one winter and never saw them again. No bodies, no official case file anyone could find. Just a house emptied, possessions slowly trickling out in sales until nothing was left. The posts grew weirder the further I scrolled. One user swore they'd seen the father wandering at night, even years after the family disappeared. Another claimed the mother's face showed up in the background of their own photos after visiting the yard sale. The replies were half disbelief, half warnings. And then one comment, almost at the bottom, "It's the camera. It doesn't just take pictures. It keeps them, collects them. Don't look too long, or you'll understand what I mean." I sat back, heart in my throat. The idea was absurd. Cameras don't collect souls, they don't track lives. But I thought of the stranger lurking in the old family photos, the way his blurred face persisted through decades, the way my own street and home had appeared. I thought of the picture of me waking up. I couldn't shake it. I reopened the files. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before. A folder I didn't remember opening. It was buried beneath layers of other folders, hidden almost deliberately. Inside, there were only 6 images. The first 5 were distorted, corrupted, the kind of digital static that usually meant data loss. But the sixth was sharp. It was a family portrait, like one you'd find in a picture frame on a mantle. But every single face had been scratched out. Not blurred, not corrupted, scratched. As if someone had dragged nails across the photo, gouging the pixels, erasing identity. My stomach dropped. Was it the missing family? Or someone else? I didn't know. But I knew this much. The rules were different here. The camera wasn't broken. It wasn't haunted in the usual sense, either. It was something else. Something that decided what to keep and what to erase. I leaned back in my chair, every light in the room suddenly feeling too dim, shadows stretching just a little too long. My thoughts churned. And then, a sound. A click. I froze, blood icing in my veins. The sound hadn't come from my laptop. It had come from the camera. The camera had just taken a photo. I hadn't touched it. I should have smashed it right then, but I didn't. Instead, I found myself turning the camera over in my hands, as if it might confess something if I stared hard enough. Every hour, I check it. Every hour, I swore I'd delete the files, or throw it in a drawer, or bury it in the yard. But each time, I turned it back on. And each time, there were more photos. They weren't like the others anymore. The family snapshots had vanished, replaced by frames that looked wrong. Faces bent and twisted as though the people inside had been pulled like rubber bands. Backgrounds stretched into angles that didn't exist in geometry. Sometimes the photos were almost abstract, blurs of color and shadow. But the longer I looked, the more I swore I saw figures in them. Figures that shouldn't exist. There were shadows shaped like men, but without features. Black silhouettes crowding behind the photograph family, crowding behind me. One shot was of my kitchen. Nothing strange at first, except for the figure reflected in the oven door. A figure standing right where I had been when the shutter clicked. But I hadn't taken it. Another was of a busy street downtown, but every pedestrian had the same blurred, eyeless face. The only person clear in the shot was me, in the middle of the crosswalk, frozen mid-step. I hadn't gone downtown in weeks. I told myself it had to be a trick, some old images the camera had stored that just happened to resemble me. But deep down I knew better. Sleep became impossible. The sound of the shutter haunted me, that soft metallic snap echoing in my head. I'd jolt awake convinced it had gone off, convinced there'd be new images waiting. And there always were. One night, after 3 days without real sleep, I let my best friend in. He took one look at me and shook his head. "Jesus, man, you look like hell." "I'm fine," I lied, clutching the camera close. "No, you're not. What's this thing doing to you? Just get rid of it. Sell it. Smash it. Burn it. I don't care. You look like you're losing your mind." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I was still in control. But even as he said it, I was already itching to check the camera again, like an addict craving a fix. I laughed, hollow and shaky. "You don't get it. It's not that simple." "Then make it simple." He put a hand on my shoulder, steady, grounding. "You're scaring me, man." He left not long after, shaking his head. He didn't understand. How could he? He hadn't seen what I'd seen. That night, the photos grew worse. Bodies appeared, crumpled on sidewalks, lying in alleys, faces blurred as if they were erased. Some of them looked staged, almost theatrical. And yet, the settings were real. Familiar. My city. My streets. One frame showed a body in my hallway. My wallpaper, my rug. But when I ran to check, the hall was empty. That's when the paranoia fully bloomed. I stopped leaving the house. Stopped answering calls. I spent hours hunched over the screen, waiting for the next file to appear. My curtains stayed shut. My lights stayed dim. It felt like the world had narrowed to two things: me and the lens of that camera. And then came the photo that broke me. It was me. Not just me in passing, not me in some random crowd. Me, sitting in my living room, holding the camera exactly as I was in that moment. The perspective was wrong. It was over my shoulder. From behind. I spun around so fast I nearly fell out of the chair, but the room was empty. The door was locked. The windows sealed. I was alone. Or I thought I was. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the thing. My mind screamed to destroy it, to end this nightmare. But I didn't. I told myself I needed to see just one more photo. Just one more clue. One more answer. And that was the lie that kept me chained to it. I don't know why I opened the hidden folder. Maybe it was compulsion, maybe curiosity, maybe the sick hope that if I understood it, I could control it. But when I clicked, I knew immediately this was something different. Something worse. The folder wasn't labeled with numbers or dates. Its name was simple, chilling, album. The first photo seemed almost ordinary. A street at night, dimly lit by a flickering lamp. But at the far end of the road, a figure slumped in the gutter. I zoomed in, my stomach tightening. It was a man, blood pooling beneath him, his face smashed in ways I can't describe without gagging. The next photo was worse. A living room I didn't recognize, ripped curtains, overturned furniture. On the wall, splattered in jagged strokes, was something dark, red, almost black. And in the corner, a child's shoe, small and clean, as if placed deliberately. One after another, the photos revealed scenes that shouldn't exist. Missing people, unsolved crimes, faces I recognized from news articles years ago. A woman who had vanished from a gas station. A teenager whose body was never found. Each photo showed them in their final moments, or what came after. And then I began to notice a pattern. In every set, every gruesome snapshot, there was the shadow. Always watching, always nearer. The next sequence made my blood run cold. It was my neighborhood, my street. The houses lined up in grim procession, darkened windows staring blankly. And in the center of one shot, my own house. I clicked again. The next photo was of my living room. Messy table, half-drunk coffee, papers scattered everywhere. My life laid bare. Another click. My bedroom. The covers tossed aside, the curtains drawn just like I'd left them. Another click. Me, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the laptop. I couldn't breathe. My chest clenched so tight I thought I was having a heart attack. And then I reached the final image. I froze. It wasn't of me dead. It wasn't even of me alive. It was of me, here, now, recording this story. My mouth half open mid-sentence, my eyes wild with terror. The camera captured me in this exact moment. I swear to you, I hadn't taken it. I couldn't have. And that's when it hit me. The story doesn't end with me. It never does. The camera doesn't just collect the dead or the missing. It collects anyone who dares to look. Anyone who listens long enough. So if you're still here, if you've stayed with me through this, maybe check your phone, your screen, your reflection, because the next photo might already have you in it. I should have ended it, smashed it, burned it, destroyed the cursed thing the second I realized what it was. But I didn't. And now, maybe, it's too late for you too. If you've made it this far, I need you to listen carefully. Whatever you do, don't go looking for this camera. Don't go digging through yard sales, pawn shops, or thrift stores hoping to stumble across some cursed artifact you think you can handle. I thought I could handle it too. But the truth is, the camera doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to anyone. It just surfaces. It drifts through hands, through families, through lives, until it finds its next keeper. And once you see what it shows you, once it decides you're part of its collection, there's no going back. I can't tell you where the camera is now. Maybe it's still sitting on my table as I speak. Maybe it's already slipped out of my house, into another box of junk waiting for the next Saturday morning bargain hunter. If you've seen a camera like this, an old one, heavy in the hand, something that seems to hum with its own quiet pulse, don't touch it. Don't bargain for it. Don't even let your eyes linger, because it wants to be found. And if you're wondering why I'm telling you this, why I'd risk dragging you into the spiral, it's because I don't know how else to warn you. Maybe this story will save someone. Maybe it's already too late. What would you do if you found it? Would you smash it? Burn it? Or would you, like me, give in to the itch to see what secrets it's hiding? Leave your answer in the comments, if you dare. But before you do, check your phone gallery tonight. Scroll through your photos carefully. See if there's one you don't remember taking.